So we have the 7950X3D, the 7900X3D, the 7800X3D, the 5800X3D, which is old gen, and now the 5600X3D? I thought AM4 was dead.
The Kraken series AIOs from NZXT come in many shapes and sizes to fit your CPU needs. The Kraken Elite series RGB coolers feature a 2.36-inch 640 by 640 customizable LCD screen, showing system info or custom images and GIFs for a custom look, F-series RGB fans, and a single breakout cable for simplified installation. If low-key is more your thing, the Kraken Elite series also comes in a black non-RGB edition while retaining the amazing pump screen. To see the full lineup of new Kraken Elite and non-Elite coolers from NZXT, follow the link in the description below.
So you guys have probably heard the news by now that AMD is launching a new X3D or stacked cache CPU designed specifically for gaming. This is built upon the exact same architecture of the extremely popular 5800X3D that gave the Intel 12900K a complete run for its money. This is an interesting launch because we are well past AM4. We are well into AM5 and all of its apparent issues. So this might actually be a little bit of a godsend for people that are interested in building a computer, don't have a lot of money to spend, want to get as much gaming performance as they possibly can, and then, have some, awesome CPU technology to go along with it. A couple things we have to talk about here. You guys may have already heard of this by now. This CPU launch is being handled entirely by Micro Center. Now, considering the fact that we live in 45 minutes from a Micro Center, that's kind of okay with me. But the problem is there are currently 25 locations for Micro Center, about to be 28, with 3 new locations opening within the next year. The problem is, even with that many locations, that means the chances of getting one are extremely slim unless, one, you travel to a Micro Center, you live near one, or you bribe somebody who lives near one to pick it up and send it to you, because you can only buy them in store. That is something that Micro Center is known for. And a lot of people have definitely kind of complained about, but it's the only way that Micro Center is able to kind of keep the pricing the way that they have it, because of the fact that by doing in-store only and limit 1 per customer. The 1 per customer thing has also been a huge thing with Micro Center to keep things as fair as possible for those people coming into their stores, to keep someone from coming in just like, I'm gonna buy them all, walk out with a cart full of CPUs, and then they get them for basically close to cost, because Micro Center with bundles and deals makes things cost less than cost, and then reselling them on eBay, Marketplace, or whatever, making money on them, and people don't get them. So one of the other tactics and the reason why people do this, or at least Micro Center's doing this, is by knowing they can get customers into the store to buy a bundle, you're more than likely to pick up other things there that are not discounted below cost, making them profitable. Now, I've always wondered how well that actually works, but considering the fact that Micro Center has continued to expand, means it's clearly working. So right off the bat, I'm gonna say that is gonna be a negative for a lot of people, is the fact that, cool, a CPU that I have 0 chance of owning, whatever. Now let's go ahead and talk about why this is the case. Why is it only being launched at Micro Center? The 5600X3D is an identical die to the 5800X3D. The difference is it has 2 cores on the CCD shutdown. So the 5800X3D is an 8-core, 16-thread through SMT, stacked Vcache CPU. So it's the exact same amount of cache. So that's already what makes it kind of neat, is if you look at the 7950X, the 7900X, and the 7800X, the 3D variants of those 3 CPUs, as you go down the stack, the cache starts to kind of go down with it, because those are being sold in the exact format in which they were designed to operate. But because the 5600X3D is a 5800X3D that has been salvaged, and we'll talk about what that means by salvage in a second, that means you get all the cache, the whole 96 megabytes of L3 cache on a 5600 SKU, which is a 6-core, 12-thread part. So yeah, you lose 4 total threads, 2 cores, 4 threads, but you also get a pretty awesome performing CPU because of the fact that the 5800X3D performance. We can kind of, even just through math, start to figure out what the performance of this will be like. Now, performance embargoes will be July 5th, I think, July 6th, somewhere around there. The launch is next week. If we're not directly on launch day, we'll be shortly thereafter, because one of the things we have to do is, one, I have to get a 5800X3D. I don't have one. I've never had one. Also, two, the price. It's $229. Now, here's what makes that price point interesting. You can get a Ryzen AM5 platform 7600 for $10 cheaper at $219. But this can still use DDR4. All Ryzen AM5 platform CPUs use DDR5, which make them that much more expensive just to buy in. Let's say you're on a current AM4 CPU or an older platform, or AM4 but an older CPU. You can upgrade to this as long as your motherboard manufacturer has an X3D for the 5800X3D BIOS. Now they're gonna have to update BIOS to make this work. And because it's such a limited run, I got sidetracked, I started talking about that. The fact that this is such a limited run, AMD had admitted they only had enough allocation or enough period that exists for one retailer. So there's no way they could have spread that out between Newegg and Amazon and Best Buy and Micro Center and Memory Express or whoever your retailer is. There's such a low quantity of these available because these are for all intents and purposes 5800X3D CPUs. It's just they've either been R-made or warrantied or broken for whatever reason. They've, instead of having a pile of e-waste of all of this silicon doing nothing, they basically collected it, sat on it, and then went, what do we do with this? And they decided to recycle it into a new usable CPU. So what does that mean? Every single one of these failed at some point. So that might be a little bit of a turnoff if you really kind of look at it from that perspective. However, it still carries a brand new CPU warranty through AMD. You can also get it warranted through Micro Center because they are the only retailer that's gonna be, / e-tailer. I'm not gonna say e-tailer because you cannot buy CPUs online at Micro Center. You can't buy GPUs, CPUs, motherboards online at Micro Center. The issue with that is they only expect them to last a few months in inventory. And that is if Micro Center is even remotely correctly anticipating the amount of demand that the CPU will have at launch. I have no idea. This is a hard one to determine how many people are gonna run out and buy a mid-tier, low-end mid-tier, like right at the start of the mid-range CPU levels, when it comes to an X3D on an older platform. I have no idea. I think a lot of people might buy this up because you can get an AM4 deal like crazy. You can get DDR4 and you can get this and you can walk out with an entire setup cheaper than buying anything on AM5. But what happens if you need to warranty this? There's probably not gonna be any more. So the question is then what? That's my concern. And that's something we need to hear from AMD and Micro Center is what do you do if after they're sold out, this needs a warranty? Because they have limited availability and they still carry a brand new warranty. So with that aside, let's talk about some of the specs. L2 is a 3 megabyte, L3 is a 96 megabyte, but the base frequency is dropped versus the 5600X non-3D. Goes from a 3.7 gigahertz base clock down to a 3.3, so you lose 400 megahertz, which you know in productivity aspect, and this is why the 7950X versus the 7950X3D, the 7950 non-X3D performs better in anything that's computational task and not just like rendering frames for gaming, is because of the lower base frequencies and the lower turbo frequencies. And that's just because of the sensitivity that the cache has to high frequency and voltage. So to make them ultra stable, they drop the frequencies a little bit and with it the voltages. Ironically though, this is a 105 watt part, which is the full wattage of a 5800X3D. And they're running lower frequencies in a 5800X3D. So you've got the base frequency on this is 3.3, the 5600 is 3.7, and then the 5800X3D is 3.4. So it's 100 megahertz slower than the 5800X3D, but the same wattage at 105. Ironically, the 5600X is a full power part at 65 watt, and it's got a 3.7 and a 4.6. And this is a 4.4. So you lose frequencies across the board with X3D, nothing new, that's always been the case. It's interesting to see that it's a full 105 watt, even though it's 4 threads less than a 5800X3D and lower frequencies on top of that. But anyway, it's going to work in AM4, which a lot of people will probably be happy about. You obviously need to make sure that your motherboard manufacturer is going to have a BIOS specific for this CPU. You cannot just assume a 5800X3D BIOS is gonna work. It must be stated. I would hope that manufacturers for motherboards would go in and tweak their 5800X3D BIOS to work with this, because with such a low availability of these, and one run rumored right now, only one run, the initial shipment sent to Micro Center, when they're gone, which is why I'm worried about warranty. So it's a very, very limited run. So how much time are the motherboard manufacturers gonna spend making sure that these all work? How big is that run? I have no idea. It could be 500, it could be 5,000, it could be 10,000, I have no idea. They haven't given any figures or numbers. So if I had to make a wild guess, this is just a wild guess based on knowing what the numbers were like for previous CPUs at launch and getting some like off the record information in the past, asking like, well, how many CPUs did you have? I would venture to guess there might be about 1,500 of them, maybe 2,000. That number could be way off, but I'm just guessing here. And that's gonna be distributed amongst all of their stores. So like Tustin, California, it's one store in California in a very populated area. I could see Tustin running out pretty quickly. Corsair brings gaming to the next level with the Xeneon 45-inch flexible OLED Xeneon Flex display. With up to 240 Hz refresh rate, 0.03 millisecond gray to gray response time, motion blur canceling, anti-reflective coating, burn-in protection, and customizable bend based on user's preference, the Xeneon Flex from Corsair allows gamers to truly tailor their display to their liking. Click the link below for more details. Micro Center's handling the launch. So I have faith in Micro Center kind of doing everything as fair as possible regarding like if there's a lot of people looking to buy the CPU, having a numbering system. I mean, Micro Center, it had some growing pains regarding GPU availability and the lines that were forming and then the lotteries and all that sort of stuff. They've gotten the GPU stuff figured out. I think they can make CPU stuff work. I know Micro Center will stand by the product because them being the only person selling it and also taking on a lot of the warranty responsibility, I have no reason to believe that they wouldn't do a good job at that. But Micro Center has never handled a launch before. This is their very first launch where they're exclusive. So I guess we'll just have to see how it goes. But anyway, I don't think it's a bad thing to have one, less e-waste making its way around the world. And two, it has me asking, what could other silicon manufacturers like NVIDIA and Intel, and heck, even AMD on the GPU side, and the rest of their CPUs be doing to one, lower e-waste by turning it into another usable product. We all know binning exists, and binning exists because of yields and failures in yield rates and product stacks. But that's only like a one-time limitation where at the time of sale, they've binned it and skewed it and off it goes. But what do you do with all the takebacks, the ones that have failures and dead cores and stuff? There's gotta be something you can do with it. So I have to wonder, is this maybe a start of seeing maybe a little bit of a revolution regarding reusing silicon? I know that they've done stuff like this in the past, but what if they were then to take other dead CPUs and create like a 5350X or something like that? I mean, we've seen all these weird SKUs that come out later, but it'd be interesting to see how this goes. Anyway, I'd love to show you some performance figures, but we can't. That embargo is still in place. You guys will see it from quite a few channels, I'm pretty sure, are gonna be involved in this. At $229 though, it's $10 more expensive than the AM5 7600. It'll be interesting to see what the overall cost is of building a reasonable AM5 rig with the 7600 and the cost of DDR5 versus an older platform. This has me thinking one last thing. When AM5 first came out, and at least was rumored, they talked about AM4 is not dead. They said that. They said AM4 is not dead. We will continue to develop product for AM4. This is the first thing we've seen come out for AM4 since AM5's launch. And it's in such a limited capacity, I have to wonder, is AMD not keeping its promise? Or is this the first in promises to actually come to fruition? I think I was expecting maybe more of a wide-scale launch of something coming out for AM4 after AM5's existence. But I think anything is better than nothing, especially if it means this does not end up in a landfill. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Watch for our review next week, and we'll see you in the next one.